Hi, Timothy Unkert here. In this video, I'm going to create a program in C++ that uses a recursive function to find the factorial of a number. So in this video, you'll learn a little bit about creating a recursive function, and you also learn a little bit about factorials. So I think the first part of the program, we want to just take in some number that the user provides that we can find the factorial of. Okay, so let's include our header files. So we're going to need to include IOStream. And we also, just for ease of use, I'm just going to, now this might not be good in production, but I'm going to say using namespace std. Okay, just so we can get that out of the way. We don't have to worry about typing std : cout, that kind of thing. Okay, so now I'm going to create our main function. I'm going to type int main, and then the end of our main function, we will return 0. Now, what we need to do is we need to create a variable that we can have a user give us an integer variable. So I'm going to call that int n, and I put a semicolon there. And then what I want to do is give some instructions to the user so they know to enter an integer. So we're going to say something like cout, which is console out. We'll describe the program. So we'll say this program takes in an integer and gives the factorial value of that integer. Okay, and let's just do a /n here and a semicolon. Okay, all right, so the program takes in an integer and gives the factorial of an integer. Now we want to let people know to enter an integer. So we'll do another console out and we'll say, please enter an integer. Okay, and we'll end that line with a semicolon. Notice I didn't put a new line here. And now I'm going to do console in, and we'll do the chevrons the other way. And then we're going to take in that integer n. Okay, all right, so now we've got the integer from the user. So now we want to create a function that actually gives the factorial value. Now you could just do a regular loop, a for loop, and loop through and calculate the factorial value. For those of you who may be wondering what a factorial value is, well, if we wanted to take the factorial of 5, basically what that is 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. In this case, it would equal 120. Okay. Factorial of 6, for instance, would be 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, and that equals 720. Okay, 720, not 710. Okay, so that's basically what our function needs to be doing. So I'm going to go up right after the using namespace std for standard namespace, and I'm going to create a function. It's going to return an integer. So I'm going to type int, and then I'm going to call it find fact for finding factorials. Now, what is this going to take in? Well, it's going to take in a number, right? That is an integer. So we'll just call that int num. You could say int n if you wanted to. We're going to pass n into it. N is going to be equal to what num is, okay? So now we want to focus on the recursive part. And the recursive function will call itself, okay? So at the end here, what I really want to do is I want to, each time through, I want to call the function for 1 less than n. So I want to decrement n by 1 every time through the function. Okay, so at the end here, I'm going to say something like return num times, and then we're going to call the function find fact, and we're going to pass in num, but we're going to decrement it by 1, so num minus 1, okay? So that's going to work for that part, but we have to have something when the number gets down to 1, because we just want to multiply by 1. So our first line, what we really need to say is something like if num double equals 1. So if it's equal to 1, we'll just return 1, okay? So it's the last time when we're just doing this find fact and we pass in, let's say 2 minus 1, which would be 1 here. We'll do what all this is times 1, right? All of this here times 1. Okay, let's see, and do we have any warnings? Let's check. Find fact is within a recursive call chain. Yes, yeah, it's a recursive function, so it's just letting us know. Okay, so what I want to do is open up a terminal and let's compile and run this program. All right, so I'm going to do Control T. That's my shortcut for my terminal here in C line. And what I'm going to do is type G++. I'm on a Linux, so I'm using the G++ compiler. And I'm going to type in the name of the file, which is recursive. I believe it's, actually, let me see. What is the name of the file? Factorial recursion underscore YouTube. Notice I did this once before. Okay, so let me get this. All right, so do G++, do factorial recursion underscore YouTube.c++, and everything compiled. Now to run it, I'm just going to do a period /a.out. And all right, so this program takes in an integer and gives the factorial value of that integer. Please enter an integer. Let's do 6. Okay. And oh, we forgot to print something out. Okay, so let's get rid of this and let's actually now call the function and print it out. Okay, so we know what a factorial does, so I'll get rid of these. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to console out, and we're going to call the function. So let's say, let's give the user a little bit of something like the value of the factorial, or the factorial of, let's see, let's call it the factorial value of the integer you entered is, and then we're going to call the function. So find fact, and we're going to pass in n, the number they entered, and then we'll just do this n line here just to bring it down, format it to a new line. Okay, so now we've called the function. Now let's run this again. So I'm going to do a Control T here to open my terminal, type G++, factorial recursion underscore YouTube.c++. Okay, everything compiled okay. We'll do a.out. All right, so this program takes in an integer and gives the factorial value of that integer. So let's enter 6. So we should get 720. So the factorial value of the integer you entered is 720. And what I could do to make this really nice is put a period at the end. Okay, that makes it a lot better. Okay, so now let's just run it again. This time let's compile and run again, and we'll run it again for, let me move this up a little bit. And well, it's still bringing it to the bottom. Okay, so let's enter in 5. Okay, and so the factorial value of the integer you entered is 120. So let's just talk about what this function is doing. How is it doing this? So let's recap. So what happens when, let's say when number is 5. So it goes in here as 5, right? And so we return 5 times this function called again with 5 minus 1. So we turn 5 times this function evaluated at 4. So then that goes through and says return 4 times. Okay, so it's 5 times 4 times this function with 3. Okay, it goes through again. So that's 5 times 4 times 3 times this function with 2. Okay, so we go again. So it's 5 times 3 times 4 times 3 times 2 times this function at 1, and the last part where we just return 1. So we get 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. And it'll work with any number you put in like that. So it'll keep calling the function upon itself. That's what a recursive function does. I hope you found this video interesting. If you did, could you please give it a like, as it will help get out to more people, and also consider subscribing to the channel, as it really does help the channel grow. I want to thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.